Thank you very much, Chairman Whitman. Another round of applause, please. All right, so we got the chairman of Virginia. So let's focus in on the chairman of the Fairfax County, Matt Ames.
Is this on? I can't tell. Oh yeah, now I can hear it. Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for coming out. Thank you, Matt, for that introduction. I'm supposed to talk a little bit about what's going on here in Fairfax County, but I want to do some other things first. First of all, I'm delighted that we have a lot of our activists here from Fairfax County, and I want to especially thank Ando, who I know has put in an enormous amount of time on this event. Please give her a big round of applause. And her son Daniel, and does enormous amount of work for all of these events and for our party in Mason District and around the county with the Vietnamese community. I want to mention just a few other names, and as always, you always get in trouble when you mention names. But Harold Pion from the Korean community is here tonight. A longtime activist and friend of the party. Bill Ho Fat with the Chinese American Republicans of Virginia is here. My good friend Tuan Dang, who's been doing enormous work with An as well in the Vietnamese community. And I'm going to stop there. I know I'm going to get in trouble, and I apologize in advance. But thank you all for everything you're doing. Asian Americans are 18% of the population of Fairfax County, and that includes South Asian, East Asian, and that's as a group that's the largest single geographic group of foreign birth that we have in Fairfax County. So it's an enormously important electoral group for us. Before I talk about that some more, though, I want to make a few points. And I have been saying for many, many years, and this is irrelevant, I think, especially to the Asian community here. I've been saying for many, many years, even before Barack Obama was elected, that the Democratic Party today, never mind what it was 30 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago, the Democratic Party is a clear and present danger to the national security and the economic prosperity of this country. There's no doubt about that. And if there is one single reason why I am doing this job, it is because they are going to tear this country down and run it into the ground if we let them. And if there's one thing that has gotten Donald Trump the nomination, and why I think he's going to win this election, is because he understands that the policies that have been pursued for the last 20 or 30 years are hurting this country in fundamental ways, and it's got to stop. Let me just give you a few examples that I think are especially relevant to the Asian community here. The president just made his trip to Asia. He arrived in China, and they didn't have steps for him to come off of the plane. Was that an accident? Does anybody familiar with Chinese culture believe that that was just an accident? And while he was in China, the president of the Philippines, the country that in international polls has the highest favorability rating for the United States in the world, 90+% favorability rating in the Philippines for the United States. The president of the Philippines called the president of the United States an SOB, and they had to cancel the trip. I don't need to say anything else. I don't need to say anything about Libya and Benghazi and Syria and what's been happening with our relationship with Russia. I don't need to even mention those things. Those two things alone tell you that our foreign policy is a disaster. And we should be ashamed as Americans of Barack Obama. I know I am. And if anybody thinks that Hillary Clinton is going to do any better, move to Syria. Go like her ambassador to Benghazi and see what happens. So, we have to put an end to this. And we were, Chairman Whitbeck was speaking earlier about those Republicans who are not quite on board yet. We cannot afford Hillary Clinton in any respect. And the choice is clear. And I put out a message right after the convention when it was formal and final that Donald Trump was our nominee. And I said, there's one thing we know about Donald Trump is he is a patriotic American. Amen. And I don't believe anybody in the Democratic Party today in their leadership falls in that category. At least not by my definition of patriotism. So let me talk a little bit about Fairfax. I had to get that out there. And I think everybody understands how important the election is and why I won't even talk about the economy. That'll take me another 10 minutes. So let me talk a little bit about Fairfax County. I mentioned earlier, 18% of our population is in the Asian community. 1 in 7 voters in Virginia lives in Fairfax County. 1 in 7. And that's why the numbers that Chairman Woodbeck was talking about earlier are so important. We need to get up our vote up to the 45% range, the mid-40s. The Democrats can't win without Fairfax County. So we need every single vote from everybody in this room. And we need your help getting the word out in your communities. We have on a table, I've left them on the table, and we can get copies of these for anybody who needs them, for your churches, for your social groups. We have copies of the Virginia Republican Creed in Korean and in Chinese and Vietnamese. And we talked about, at one point, for the South Asian folks, we talked about translating, but Puneet Ahluwalia, our first vice chairman, said, they all speak English. They don't need anything translated into, Hindi or anything like that. So, but if you read those statements about what the Virginia Party and the Republican Party of Virginia stands for, and it's all things I think everybody in this room believes in, that immigrant communities believe in, and I think if you pass those out and take a few of them, I think they'll be well received, and we can provide as many copies as are needed if you find them useful. Another thing that's happening locally is does everybody in this room know about the meals tax that's going to be on the ballot? Is there anybody here who doesn't know about the meals tax? Okay, good. That gives me a reason to talk about it. But briefly, because I know we have a lot of speakers. But on the ballot in November, and actually starting today, because voting started today, okay, from every day until November 8th, you can vote. And on the ballot, there's a referendum under which the Board of Supervisors wants to tax every prepared meal in Fairfax County with an additional, it's a total 10% tax, 6% sales tax plus an additional 4%. 10%, if you come back here and have a regular restaurant meal in the other part of the dining room here, tomorrow, after this thing is passed, if it passes, 10% on top. If you have a banquet here, 10% on top. If you have a wedding reception and you hire a caterer, 10% on top. If you go to 7-Eleven and buy a hot dog, 10%. Okay, if you buy a rotisserie chicken at the Giant, that's 10%. So this has got to be stopped. We're doing a great job, I think, getting the word out, but if you know anybody in the restaurant community, they need to get the word out, and you need to tell your friends and neighbors to make sure to go vote for Donald Trump and against the meals tax. Just a couple things to wrap up, and then I'm going to introduce our next speaker. We need your votes. We need your friends' votes. We need your family's votes. We need people from your church to vote. And you can help us on the ground at 9:30 tomorrow morning. 9:30 tomorrow morning, and basically every Saturday. If you go to our headquarters, we need help with people making phone calls. We need help with people going door to door, knocking on doors. If you're not comfortable with that, we can arrange small group meetings in your home. We'll provide materials. You invite 10 of your friends and explain to them why it's important to vote for Donald Trump. Will help. And we've got material out front. You can pick that up. You can go to our website. It's fairfaxgop.org. Give us a call, send us an email, and we'll get somebody in touch. So that's really all I could talk about the Fairfax County Republican Committee all night long because it's what I do. I supposedly practice law, but I don't really, not anymore. But I'll stop there. But we've got to save this country. We've got to preserve. We've got to bring back, and that's why Mr. Trump is criticized for using the word again. But the fact of the matter is, we've lost a lot. And for instance, my friend Tuan Dang came here from Vietnam as a young man, and I don't really know his life story, but it's an amazing story, the little bit that I know. And I know how much he loves his country, and I know how hard he works for both his fellow Vietnamese who are still stuck in Vietnam, and the problems that are being created by the regime there, and the problems that are being created for Vietnam by the aggression of China. But I know how much he loves this country, and he has served this country, and he's continuing to serve this country. And I just name him as an example. Please follow his example and do everything you can to bring this country back and restore what brought you to this country in the first place. And now, I'm sorry it took so long, I just can't help myself. It's my great pleasure. I'm going to introduce our next speaker. It's my great pleasure now to introduce Bert Misuzawa, who is an advisor to the Trump campaign on foreign affairs, and he has a remarkable background and resume. He's currently president of PacCentric Inc., which provides business and national security consulting services for corporate and government decision makers. He's a Major General in the Army and former commander of the Combined Joint Interagency Task Force Afghanistan. He has commanded the Army's most forward deployed infantry company in Korea at the DMZ, a Marine Landing Battalion, and the Army Reserve's Cyber Command. Misuzawa served in leadership positions during 4 combat tours and is the recipient of the Silver Star, Defense Superior Service Medal, Legion of Merit, Bronze Star, and over 30 other decorations as well as awards from foreign governments. During his career, he served as senior assistant to the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, the Secretary of the Army, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's also held a gubernatorial appointment here in Virginia to the Virginia Homeland Security Commission, and he's also served on advisory boards and as the president of a major veterans organization. He graduated first in his class from West Point, which my grandfather went to West Point for 2 years and they asked him to leave. So that is a remarkable achievement. And he also holds a law degree from Harvard Law School, a master's in public policy from the Kennedy School at Harvard, and a master's of strategic studies from the U.S. Army War College. Please welcome Bert Misuzawa.